the third version of the project, generating insights on how to create lasting deliberation models, how it can be replicated, and how can they be sustained over time. And specializing in the design and methodologies for deliberation, our thematic committee in designs and methodologies for deliberation works as a voluntary and collaborative space to share insights, best practices, knowledge, and experiences about how to create and adapt inclusive and effective processes. So, we want to share some valuable reflections from the first quarter on strategic and urgent questions about design and methodologies for deliberation. Um, Around democratic values, design, and engagement, and the political will to increase it and sustain people's belief in democracy, about where or who, in terms of policy influence and participant retention, how to influence policy decisions amid division between decision makers and the public, and specifically, how can we invite people to participate in these processes, retain them in the long term, and create genuine relationships with them. And finally, we discuss about the how, thinking about massive outreach platforms beyond the scope of workshops, and also the need to create exchanges of learning in places like this, as well as self-paced courses and platforms. So we want to open the discussion with you through this masterclass of our special guest. Remember, all channels are open and you can activate the subtitles if you need it. I'll now give the floor to Vanessa Gonzalez, who is a political and social scientist at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. She has worked at Fundación Ciudadanía Inteligente since 2018, where she currently serves as coordinator of processes and strategic planning. During this time, she has focused on strengthening democracy, citizen participation, and transparency across Latin America. And also, she has coordinated public innovation and open government projects with municipalities and civil society organizations in Chile, Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, and Ecuador, focusing on deliberative practices, context-based advocacy, and strengthening local capacities. So welcome, Vane, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? I think I just share my screen, right?
Yes, please.
Oy. Okay. Can you see it? Yes.
Yeah, super. If you want to put it in presentation mode.
Lo estoy compartiendo, a ver. There? Perfect. Great. Um, well, hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Gonzalez, and I'm a project coordinator at Fundación Ciudadanía Inteligente. Thank you all for being here, and thanks as well to the Morissette team for inviting me to this space. My English is not the best, so I ask for your patience. And if you don't understand something, please feel free to interrupt me ask me anything, and I will try, along with the team of the Morissette, to try to communicate the best as possible. Okay? So I'll start by giving a bit of context about where what I'm going to say today comes from. I'm a part of Fundación Ciudadana Inteligente, an organization based in Chile that work across Latin America. Our main focus is strengthening democracy in the region by promoting participation, transparency, and public policy advocacy. As a part of what I present, I will zoom in one of our projects called Abre Alcaldías. This is a program that works with local governments and municipalities to design and implement participatory public policies, connecting citizens and institutions around issues such as the environment, gender, and interculturality. So, what is our objective today? Our goal is to strengthen your capacities in designing deliberative processes, incorporating three key elements: strategic outreach, meaningful experience, and finally, sustainability and impact, with a strong emphasis on building trust. The agenda for the session: first, we'll start from participation to impact, a bit of context, some methodological frame. Then we'll look at strategic or effective outreach, who to reach and how. Then we will see experience design, how we address relevance and trust in these experiences, and finally sustainability and impact. Okay. So to begin with the first part of this agenda, moving from participation to impact, I want to start by saying that deliberation does not begin when people start speaking. It begins when we design the process. This includes the strategic outreach, which we already touched on: who participates, how we reach them, how we invite them. Then comes the meaningful experience, why people choose to participate and stay engaged. And finally, sustainability and impact, how we connect these spaces to real public policy decision or decision-making processes. But before all of this, we'll go through a brief stage zero, which is essentially about how we identify which issues we want to work on, or which topics are most strategic for deliberative processes. Here, I rely on the public policy cycle, which I assume most of us are somewhat familiar with. But essentially, a problem emerges. This problem goes through a diagnosis phase, including data collection, research, and then leads to the formulation of a response, an initiative, project, or action. This is then implemented, evaluated, and assessed to determine whether the problem persists or not. If it does, it comes back to the diagnosis and the formulation stage, and so on. The problem itself may also evolve. So rather than a linear process, this is understood as a cycle, something that continuously loops and builds on itself. Generally, for a problem to enter this cycle, it has already appeared in the public agenda. Public meaning associated with public institutions. In other words, when something is framed as a problem and begins the process of analysis and policy formulation, it is because it is already recognized by the institutions. However, we make a distinction between public agenda and social agenda. There are often issues that citizens are experiencing, real pains or challenges that not necessarily are being addressed by public institutions. So, how do we identify these issues? How do we recognize which topics matters to people and should be addressed by the institutions? On one hand, and this is very characteristic of Latin America, but I think it's all over the world, citizens themselves will make their agenda visible. Their social agenda becomes clear, with even a small level to connection to the communities and territories becomes quite evident what the main concerns are and which of them are the most urgent or pressing. If we need more information, we can also rely on research conducted by civil society organizations as well as protest, collective action, form of association around specific issues. In other words, there is an ongoing conversation driven by citizens that helps identify what matters to them. But it's important to pause here and emphasize this stage zero, um, because we always must stay connected to territories and communities, because no matter how well designed is a deliberative process, if the topic itself is not relevant or engaging for people, it will not be sustainable. It will not last over time. So that is our starting point. Okay. All right. So we move on to the next stage, which is about to create effective outreach. Effective outreach has two components: who we invite and how we invite them. Let's start with who. Very often, deliberative processes are understood as something that needs mass participation, that everyone has to be there. The more people, the better. That fewer spaces are the better, so that everyone gathered in one visible, big instance. Today, I want to challenge that idea. As organization and more broadly as actors connected to the public sphere, we constantly face limitations: lack of resources, time, funding, spaces, people. So we don't always have to invite everyone. We have to be strategic. A deliberative process must build legitimacy, and legitimacy does not come only from involving everyone, but from ensuring the representation of marginalized groups, and equally important, groups that are directly affected. These groups should also be diverse among themselves in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, and territory. In other words, we are trying to move beyond purely random selection, which has become quite popular lately, and instead recognize that some people are more affected by certain issues than others. It might be more valuable to ensure that those profiles are present when designing a deliberative process. Let me give you some examples. I'm going to drink a little bit of water and I'll continue. Okay. For instance, if we want to address the redesign of a public transportation in a city, this might seem very basic or obvious to many of you, but who do we involve? Who to engage? Frequent users, people from different territorial areas, center, periphery, and people from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Who do we not necessarily need to include? People who rarely use public transportation. Um, at least not at the same level. If we want to gather insights from, for example, people who don't use public transportation but do use streets or pedestrian pathways, we can create other spaces to collect that input. But again, they are not necessarily the strategic audience we need to prioritize, especially when we are working with limited resources. Another example, it's a program for unpaid caregivers. Who should we involve? Caregivers themselves, care related organizations, community network who are connected to this issue, but who is not a priority? General population that does not live this experience. What happens if we invite everyone in the spirit of mass participation? Participation becomes less deep, more symbolic, and it loses depth and robustness. Okay? I'm checking if the chat is a question of something like that. I think we are okay. That said, uh, there are cases where it does make sense to involve a broader and more diverse group. For example, when a municipality or local government is deciding how to allocate resources. In that case, we do invite the general public and civil society organizations. But again, since we are working in a context of limited resources, time, people, funding, we still need to be strategic. So we introduce filters by territory, by age, by gender, if it needed, by ethnicity, by religion, race, and so on. So, summarize this first key idea. Participation is not mass by default. It must be intentional. It must be strategic. Now, when it comes to how to do outreach, oh, creo que me equivoqué, me pasé una. Okay. Once we're clear about who we want to reach, we need to figure out how to reach them. I am sorry. I think, I'm sorry, everyone. I mixed up the images. Um, Let me just a second. Okay. All right. Um, I'm going back a bit. Participation is not mass by default. It must be intentional. So we stop a bit thinking about who we need to reach for the theme or the topic we want to explore and make a solution or problem solving around it. Now, once we clear about who we want to reach, we need to figure out how to reach them. And this brings us to the second component of the effective outreach. Now we know who, now how. If we go back to the public transportation example and we want to identify what needs to change, how do we invite people? How do we invite people into a deliberative process? There are generally three commonly used channels. First, and the most obvious one, social media, such as Instagram, Facebook, or similar platforms. And when we want to be a bit more innovative about this, we don't just post a graphic, we also do a video, for example. Second, an email, sending invitation through email or mailing list. And third, broader communication channels such as posters, invisible public spaces, mentions in media outlets, or even text messaging. These are usually the most traditional ones. They are also the fastest. But now we all going to do a short activity that we'll discuss afterwards. But I like to invite you to think, unlike the previous approach of social media, email, and messaging, um, about what would outreach look like in an ideal world, considering the specific audience we want to engage. So, for when it comes to how to do outreach, for this exercise, we are not to focus on economic, time, or human resources constraints. Instead, we will try to imagine what the ideal scenario look like. This is simply to open up our thinking a bit. In a designing process, there are moments we focus and close and define, like the topic, and moments when we open up and think outside the box and we are creative. And this is the moment of being creative. We have three personas here, Christopher, Jabadi, and Ariel. Christopher is 60 years old, Javadi is 48, and Ariel is 18. A little bit about these personas. Christopher loves fishing and his grandson. He strongly supports the police and dislikes taxes. He does not attend community meetings, but usually goes to school parent meetings for his grandson's school. Yabadi does not closely follow the national news and not understand social media. Every morning she shops at the local store and talks with people there. She attends public workout session at the park in the afternoon. And then Ariel spends the most of of his time on social media following skateboarding, music, gaming content. Rarely engage with traditional news or institutional information, usually posts about the lack of public spaces to hang out or escape. So, what are we going to do? We are going to work in groups, uh, and we are considering the scenario of redesign public transportation. Okay, we are a group of professionals who wants to invite this kind of people, these personas, to um, activity that today talk and deliberate about redesigning public transportation in their cities. So, um, as I mentioned, we are setting aside resource constraints. We are allowing ourselves to think more freely about how to design the participatory call. This is the opening up phase where there are no limitations. Each group of you will be assigned one persona at random. You will need to answer the following questions. Where does this person get their information? What do they care about? What would they trust or not in a participatory process? How could you invite these persons to engage in a conversation about public issues? So essentially, the goal is to think about the best possible scenario to include these individuals in the conversation. The case, again, that we are working on is the redesign of public transportation in a city. So we are going to be in breakout rooms in three groups where you will be with some facilitators. Group A will be about Christopher, how will be invited them, what do they care, where does this person get the information, and so on. Meli?
Yes, let me show you. We have group number one with Silvia.
it will be Christopher. Group number two, it will be Hadavi with Andrea Restrepo. And group number three, it will be with me. It will be Ariel. It's okay.
Perfect. So I'll send the questions by chat, so everyone has have them in hand. And we are going to be in the breakup rooms about 10 minutes to discuss, uh, and then we will reconvene to not necessarily going question by question, but rather the reflection that emerged from the group, from the exercise. We are trying to get these people who are not connected to social media, who not watch national news or institutional news, to come from a process of deliberation that we need their perspective. We want today to come. So how do we get to them? Okay. Now, with that said, I don't know if there are some questions before we begin with the work in groups. If not, I think we can start with that. And we see each other in 10 minutes. And feel free to reach out. I'll be also moving between the rooms, okay?
Mm, mm, mm. Sorry, I am making this. No sé cómo irme a las salas. Ya se fueron todos?
A ver,
Ah,
creo que
bueno,
sí.
súper. Menos yo. Solo me uno. Acá. Listo. Se supone que yo te tengo que unir, Vane. ¿Listo? Entonces déjame por chat. Cuando ya quieras, más o menos en cuánto.
Ok. ¿Te hablo por el chat de aquí o por WhatsApp?
Yo creo que mejor por WhatsApp. Lo tendré acá,
Okidoki.
acá abierto. ¿Listo?
Súper. Cuento. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. I don't know if all the breakout rooms are now closed. I think not.
It is a close in 60 minutes, but let me check. Hopefully, yeah. Yeah.
Yay.
Everyone are connected now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks, Meli. So, how was the activities? What conclusions did you reach? I don't know if someone wants to share a quick reflection about what do you think, what emerged in the room. Feel free to reach out the mic or write in the chat.
Maybe I shortly, Vanessa.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I
Leo?
mean, it was, yeah, thank you very much. It was very interesting discussion. It was a bit tricky because in regarding of the Christopher story, we have been discussing about two sides of his story. First, it was related to the security concerns, and second one to his private family concerns because he gave priority to go to for his children to the parents meeting, and he didn't want to go to community meeting. So for him priority was to go to take care about his children interests.
Mhm.
And he was very patriot because he used to inform and to reach out police for all concerns. But in meantime, he was not the guy who cares too much about taxes. So that's why in the beginning of my inputs, I thought that it was a bit tricky. So this was my point of view regarding the story that we have discussed. For sure, there have been more issues and points that we would like to discuss, but time finished, so maybe my colleagues could add another views regarding the story that we have discussed. Thank you very much.
Julio, I don't know if anyone of the Leo's room or other room wants to share about their reflections. Was it tricky for you too? Um, we don't have all the information of these profiles, so what assumptions did you have to make?
Maybe I can add to Leo's reflection. Well, I also find it interesting, the conversation in the room, because we had to make this kind of assumptions that Leo was reflecting about and was sharing. And we found that maybe this is something that happened in all the rooms, but being someone elder, we found that maybe he did not trust in implementation of this kind of processes of the
maybe solutions or agreements that they reach, because maybe he made part of previous public participation processes and he saw that they were not being implemented. Also for the lack of feedback from these mechanisms of public participation, and seeing how change is limited. And we also find that there is maybe a lack of public information for him to reach to that information, or maybe there's too much information and he can get overwhelmed with it. And I just want to share two ideas that the group got into for invite Christopher to the process. So use of indirect methods such as polling, survey, or mail consultation. And also create some rules on how his contributions will be taken into account in the process, like a whole follow-up process, but where he can make his own follow-up for his contributions.
Thank you, Sylvie. Well, in order to take care of the time, I'll be sharing what I experienced when we first encountered with these reflections. We were in a meme workshop, like social meme, social media meme, and we realized how narrow we had been in the way we approach outreach. We had assumed that our way of accessing information was the same for everyone, without questioning where others were speaking from or how do they relate to public discussions. From there, we began to ask key questions. What role, in the case of Christopher, for example, what role can schools play in the process of citizen deliberation? Does it make sense to try to inform through familiar figures like Christopher Gramson, for example, or other everyday cultural codes? What would happen if we design activities connected to concrete practices such as fishing in his case, while also incorporating a family-oriented approach? Because in this case, Christopher um, he has or he shows a level of distrust. He doesn't participate in community meetings, lacks on trust in taxation, and some aspects hold what we could be described as an individualistic perspective. In case of Yadavi, she attends activities with the municipality in the afternoons. He goes regularly and we want to invite her to participate. So our approach might be to build an alliance with the municipality or the local government itself as a space of exchange or engagement. This highlights how important it is to connect with other stakeholders in the moment of a, a call, outreach. Finally, Ariel might be the easiest to reach. I don't know if that's the conclusion that the group or the breakout room uh, uh, got, but might be the easiest to reach because we already know how to connect with him. He is in social media. We know what subjects he likes. He spends time there, so his access to information can be shaped through those platforms. But there is a new challenge in that matter that is not only we who we want to engage with and how do we reach them, but building on this a new question emerged is how do we get them to show up? So until now, we just want to reach them to invite them. But how do we make they come to the session? Okay. So They receive the information. How do we make them to want to attend? In the case of Ariel, he see the post in Instagram. How do we make them want to go and stay and even come back if the deliberative process has more of one session? How do we how do we ensure they return? To explore this, we'll focus on two key conditions: relevance and trust. So we are going to move step by step of the designing processes. We are just finished the part of the outreach. Who we want to invite and how do we invite them? And now we pass to the designing the participatory experience so they want to attend. Okay? So to address this, I'm going to present a short case study related to a local government in Chile, the municipality of Peñalolén.
Sorry,
Sorry,
go
Sylvie.
ahead, go ahead.
Yes, please. If you have any reflections, leave it in the chat. I'm just moving forward because of the time. As I was saying, I'm going to present a short case study related to the municipality of Peñalolén, a municipality in Chile, where we work on rebuilding trust in order to strengthen local environment democracy. Okay, so the project, we were invited by the municipality to work with them to a project that aimed to create a municipal environmental committee, conceived as a formal platform for coordination between citizens and the municipality to support environmental decision making. The challenge was that this committee had already existed before. It had been created, consolidated, and then 1 year later, the municipality applied for an international certification that required the existence of a territorial, not municipal, environmental committee. This new committee had essentially the same functions, but a different name, and had to be created from scratch in order to get the certification requirements. As a result, at one point in time, the municipality was working with both municipal environmental committees and a territorial environmental committee. This fractured trust in both spaces. They ended up competing with one another, and eventually both spaces became inactive and stopped functioning, uh, and even stopped responding to the municipality. I like to briefly describe, before I move on, the different actors in this case. We have organized and non-organized citizens. Organized like in a territorial space, neighborhoods, associations, like that. Civil society actors as ourselves, like civil society organizations, public sector actors like the local government, and international stakeholders. In this case, they were two international actors involved. The first one, who has to be with the certification and the creation of a territorial committee, and the second one, another international stakeholder who um, companion us with funding to we so we can do this project. Okay, this is simply to give a sense of the different levels of actors involved and the importance each one holds, both in the problem and in developed a solution. The municipality approached us as an organization to explore how we could create a new committee would effectively connect with citizens' priorities with the municipality's more formal decision-making processes. Okay? So, assumptions and actions we took and didn't work. First, we assumed that since we were a new actor, it wouldn't be too difficult to ask people who had participated in the previous committees about their experiences and their opinions on creating a new one. So we organized a traditional focus group with participation incentives. We offered plans, ran outreach campaigns, posted on Instagram, and also invited participants through the municipality network. The results was very low turnout. We had 20 people registered and only 3 attended. Even so, we spoke with those 3 participants and we realized that participating had already cost them a lot of time and led to many disappointments. They were not willing to attend a traditional engagement formats anymore. Actually, they have come only because we were who were calling for them, but they were not willing to attend or revisit the issue again. So our new assumption was that we need to create activities and spaces that people would actually want to attend. So we shift our approach, took more time to design the process and develop 2 lines of work. On one hand, community environmental workshop based on people's interest, and a municipal environmental contest that aimed to fund local initiatives, allocating around 3,000 US dollars to support 3 community projects, uh, each one of them with $1,000. Regarding the workshops, here's a preview. We organized 2, one focused on trekking and bird watching, another focused on soil work, gardening, and urban farming. What happened? What happened with this? At the same time and the same days, Saturday mornings, we had over 200 registered participants and around 120 attend, with a very rich diversity in age. For the trekking and bird watching activity, for example, we had a largely young audience. Participants range roughly from 5 to 55 years old, and there were about 60 attendees. For the gardening and soil workshop, participants were mostly between 30 and 75 years old. This gave us a very broad age diversity, a strong and um, strong participation from women who are often highly involved in community and care-related work, and therefore sometimes it's harder to engage, and also a wide territorial distribution in terms of where participants came from. These experiences clearly show us that creating a space closer to people's interest generates strongest engagement. It also confirmed that we needed to redesign participatory spaces with people real interest in mind. At this point, you might be wondering, what does all of this have to do with a deliberative process? So we were promoting workshops, the bird watching, for example. So in between the bird watching activity, we introduce a space when we can also talk about the Municipal Environmental Fund, which could support community-based projects related to birds, bird protection, observation, and so on. And while we were sharing this, we also took the opportunity to run a short exercise to gather community priorities and concerns about participation in environmental subjects, what they see as positive, what they think is missing, whether they know the environmental committee that existed before, what the reflections they have about it, and so on. Something similar happened in the soil and gardening workshop. It was very dynamic, hands-on session. But about towards the end, we were given about 10 minutes to inform participants about the environmental fund and another 20 minutes to run an exercise to gather concerns related to citizen participations. So, what were the results? We mobilized more than 100 people in community environmental activities. We received 26 applications to the Municipal Environmental Fund. This is significant because each application required the support of at least 3 additional people or 3 additional actors. Could it be the actor, a family itself, or a school itself? Um, the winning projects reached an audience of around 2,000 people, as some were backed by schools, neighborhoods, associations, or community networks involving over 50 families in the projects. We also strengthened territorial networks for climate action. I'll explain how in a moment. And the project remained active even through a local government election. The team who has reached out to us to do this uh, had changes because of the elections. But even so, the project remained active, which we consider a major achievement. It's one of the major challenges when we do a deliberative process. How do we maintain after administration changes? Now, how do we strengthen these community networks? Um, During the award ceremony of the Environmental Fund, we invited not only the winners, but also who applied and did not win. This was um, how do you say cuesta? Like uh, I don't know. We want to risk ourselves inviting the ones who won and the ones who hasn't won. Um, because the goal was fostering community connections. We moved beyond the formal certificate giving moment, although we included because the municipality asked for it, but instead we prioritized sharing what we had in common, what kinds of territorial work were already happening, what the main concerns were, and how we envisioned the future of our territory. This created about 2 hours of meaningful exchange and connection. Since then, we've seen that participants have remained connected, collaborating on initiatives like community gardens, educational activities on their neighborhoods, and things like this. So, additionally, as part of strengthening collaboration, we included in the evaluation criteria a preference for projects that had a strongly community support network. The winning projects include a school-based initiative where a student plays an educational role on environmental issues within their community, a community garden including 57 families focused on sustainable food production and learning about plant care, and a project led mainly by older adults aiming to promote inclusive food security through a garden adapted to their needs, recognizing that not everyone can physically work the soil in the same way. So within this case, I want to highlight where the relevance comes in. The relevance comes from the fact that the topic and spaces we created were engaging for the community. This connects back to what I mentioned earlier about the social agenda versus the public agenda. Our priority was to gather their perspectives on citizen participation and deliberation, but for them, that was not the priority. Their priorities were things like making use of green spaces in the city, learning from experts about gardening, taking care of plants, and engaging in activities they already enjoy. So we designed accessible and appealing formats. We created spaces people actually wanted to attend, We communicated through multiple channels, flyers in health centers, schools, municipal offices, so anyone engaging with the municipality for any reason could learn about these activities. And within these workshops, we not only design accessible entry points to attend, but also accessible ways to engage in reflection about participation. We also created clear incentives and direct connection with the institution, the public institution. Um, so these incentives operated in two levels. First, the activity itself, doing something that people enjoy, like bird watching. And the second, the opportunity to propose ideas, receive funding, and directly connect with the public institution and local government. Now, where does comes the trust come in? We understand trust at three levels in a deliberative process. First, we see it in the space itself. The space needs certain norms. It should come with some basic agreements. One key recommendation is that even before we introduce ourselves in a space, a deliberative space, we allow participants to define their own rules of coexistence, what they need from others in order to work well together. Why is this important? Because it immediately sets a standard for participation. People don't attend as passive listeners. They come with agency in the first second of the session with a real capacity to contribute. We can make some norms like a standard based, but in the moment we ask them, how do you want to work? What do you need to work the best? The people instantly knows this is a different space when I can talk and they will write what I'm about to say. So they come with agency, with a real capacity to contribute. Then comes clear rules of participation. In our case study, this was very important. We invite people to free open workshops with no restrictions. When we introduce additional participatory space, we were wanted to gather input. We made sure to inform them clearly, allow them to drop out if they wishes, and answer any question about the community environmental fund so they could apply effectively and with confidence. Um, Also, the space must also be able to make participants visible and protect them. This is where facilitators plays a crucial role. It also connects to recognizing that inequalities exist in participation. I will zoom in on this a bit uh, later, but this is how trust comes in the space. How do we want to they feel in this space? Then comes the trust in the process. How do we manage this? Having clear objectives, being transparent about what will happen with the results, offering clear incentives, maintaining a connection with institutions. That institutional connection is key, but it must be handled carefully. Sometimes we think that promising big changes will increase engagement or loyalty. We tell people this is the space where things will change. But often the opposite is more effective, lowering expectations and grounding the process in reality. For example, in the case, we told participants we will do everything we can to gather their priorities and bring them to the local government. We will advocate for them. We cannot promise change. Why? Because if we promise change and it doesn't happen, we become part of the cycle of distrust. So our role is to be an ally of the community, not necessarily of the institution. We act as a bridge, yes, We will push as much as possible, but our primary commitment is to those who are giving their time, their energy, and often sharing difficult life experience with us. Okay? And the third level in trust is in the result. Visible outcomes like funded projects are one of the goals. Ongoing connection with institutions also, concrete progress and achievements, and opportunities for continued collaboration. This sometimes feels like too hard to manage or to get, but in our case study, one key outcome was community articulation. Not the funding, not the project, the community articulation. People meeting others working on similar issues, building networks, and continue this collaboration, whether for urban gardens, education, or other collective actions, um, generates a small commitment, and this commitment matters. They reinforce both transparency and accountability, and it's an outcome that people feels. They go home happier after they know more people that is interested in the matter that they uh, have studied and can share with us about their experiences. So um, that's the three levels of trust I want to highlight, and the different forms we can approach them. That doesn't mean to do the big and giant deliberative process with the big commitment of the public institutions, because we will not always have that. So what about trust? And I going to zoom in on something crucial that I was speaking before, making participants visible and protecting them, and recognizing inequalities in participation. There is a key moment at the beginning of any deliberative process. As I mentioned earlier, inviting participants to co-create norms of interaction can completely shift the tone. Another key element is understand where people are coming from. The exercise of profiles was a bit of this also. We are not trying to open a space for debate. We are opening a space for conversation. So before asking what people think, we need to understand from where they are speaking. That might be an emotion, a lived experience, an identity, a concern, political perspective. Everything we hear should be met with empathy and recognition. How do we do this in practice? And how do we make the space manage to get there? Sometimes it's as simple as changing how we introduce ourselves. Instead of saying where we work or what institution we represent, we share who we are as people. For example, my name is Vanessa. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I feel connected to ancestral traditions. I love dancing. I think that's how I express myself. Um, what I enjoy the most about my work is connecting with people and finding ways to keep conversations going despite the differences. And I think I don't like much soccer. So that kind of introduction transforms you. You are not longer seen as an authority or a problem solver. You're just person. And when everyone presents themselves this way, it becomes much easier to build empathy, listening, and recognition. This might seem something like it's easy to skip, especially when time is tight, but the reality is, we are not just running a deliberative session. We are trying to change how decisions are made, and that requires time. Trust is the foundation of any deliberative process, and trust takes time. It requires repetition and consistency. So, to conclude this section, participation and deliberation must connect with people's everyday lives. People don't mobilize around abstract institutions, they mobilize around concrete issues, safety, health, and even sometimes nothing institutional at all. So we need to plan around what people actually care about. That's why we have those questions going on. The spaces, we need to plan around the spaces they already inhabit in their daily lives. This helps to reduce the cost of participation because participation has a real cost. People work long hours, provide care, feel stressed, and asking them to participate is an additional burden. We need to balance that cost with value. And since participatory processes takes time to produce results and value, we cannot only rely on promises. We need to make the process itself is valuable. That means meeting people where they already are. For example, instead of expecting people to seek out information about new public policy transport, we can integrate participation into existing spaces like health services, community activities, local events. It's about thinking a bit outside the box and leveraging existing infrastructure spaces that already have public value and participation. It might require more effort and resources at first, but it leads to greater sustainability and deeper impact because in the end, we selected the right people, we reached them effectively, we got them to stay, and we created depth in the deliberative process. So, considering everything we've done so far, let's talk quite fast about sustainability and impact. To understand a sustainable process and to go beyond simply receiving funding, we need to recognize that these processes are continuous. We are not just aiming for a single moment or a symbolic milestone. We are building a new infrastructure for decision making. Because of that, it's essential to include different types of activities and strategic points that allow what we are building to be sustained over time, going beyond our initial goals. First, understanding and connecting to identify priorities. We've already touched this point, so think of it as a recap. We need to be in contact with territories and communities to connect with them directly. Not because we are above, but we as organized groups, often with funding, sometimes operate from a higher level perspective. So we must intentionally work bottom up from the ground. Second, strategic outreach and design, what we have seen today, who we are inviting, them, what are we inviting them to. Third, transparency. I did not touch this subject enough in this model, but people will always have questions, and we should already have answers available. Ideally, information should be shared before people even ask for it. And not only online, but in every space we were engaged with citizens. What have we done? What results did we achieve? What are we going to do now? What are the objectives of this special space? And so on. Fourth, amplify and connect. This means building relationships not only within institutions, but across them. In the municipal case I mentioned earlier in Peñalolén, we didn't just work with one office. We connected with Office of Citizen Participation, Office of Community Development, Office of Planning, Communication, even the mayor's team. And beyond the municipality, we also work with other organizations. So there comes the fifth, connect with existing community networks. There are already territorial space doing some important work. Recognizing and collaborating with them amplifies the reach, builds legitimacy, reduces costs, logistical and financial ones. These networks can support many aspects we often assume requires extra funding. Now, an important point, treating deliberative process as a permanent funding line for civil society organizations is very complex. Why? Because again, we are not producing isolated events. We are trying to transform decision-making infrastructure. So eventually the goal is for the process to no longer depend on us, but to be sustained by the ecosystem of actors, tools, and relationships built along the way. Yeah. Sixth, commit and follow through. Not just us, all the participants. This means creating commitments, assigning small tasks, setting short timelines, and even small concrete steps help build this new infrastructure over time. Seven, strengthen civic will and leadership. A key reflection is the role of citizens and activism in sustaining processes. When funding fails, when institutions fail, when organizations fall short, it is citizens and activists and local leaders who keeps these issues alive. They continue pushing their priorities into the public agenda. That's why connecting with them is essential. In fact, one of the reasons the project in Peñalolén survived local election was precisely because so many people were involved. It wasn't tied to a single administration. If these recommendations sound familiar, it is because they align closely with the core sustainable factors. Context appropriate design, strong institutional connections, community engagement, social legitimacy, internal strengthening, strategic alliances, flexibility, and access to diverse resources. Finally, and again, sustainability often depends on will beyond institutions, citizens, civil society, and activists. They hold institutions accountable, push for continuity, advocates for change in the agenda. So to close, let's return to a key idea. One of the biggest mistakes in participatory processes is forgetting that people have lives. People work, study, care for others, feel exhausted, need to rest, need to leisure. So they are not waiting around participate. They are trying to live their lives. So the real challenge is to design spaces that respects people's times, acknowledge their effort and sacrifice, build trust, generates real value. And value doesn't always have to be a public policy outcome. It can also be a space for connection, a space for collaboration, a space for relief and well-being, a sense of community. We need to think beyond what we traditionally focus on, because when participation is meaningful, people just don't just attend, they come back, they stay engaged, and they become part of the process. So that's it. I don't know if you have any questions, ideas, or reflections. I can also pass the mic to you, Meli or Andre, to end the meeting. Thank you all for your attention. I hope I'll be uh, helpful. That was the word.
Thank you so much, Vani. We can put the next slide, the final, for the takeaways. And we want to open the mic to listen to you, to see reactions. What do you take from this session? For us, it's very important to hear you. Also, we will send you by the chat and a survey where you can evaluate this session. For us, it's very important. Remember that We will have 2 more sessions in the following months. So the idea is, of course, take your comments, advices, or recommendations for the next sessions. But in this case, we want to hear your thoughts about Vanessa recently shared with us. Thank you, Vani. Who want to share some thoughts?
I like, for example, to invite some people that I had in my breakout room. For example, Yamber, Icha, David, Sunil, that they were talking about some very interesting things about the exercise that I proposed, Bane, but also recommendations that they hear from the mentorship program. I think this session is really inspiring to think about the experimentation possibilities that we have in the following months in your different processes. So it will be nice to hear your perspectives and principal thoughts that emerged today with this talk. Salma, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the space. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Vanessa. This presentation is really great and fruitful. I learned a lot, and I'd like to really kind of reflect to our process in Kota Kita, and also I have several questions regarding the points that Fanny already presented here. So I pretty much agree the points that you make. For example, that the crucial things is uh the trust, and we couldn't promise change, but we could try to advocate as much as we can to the communities, and that trust should be built like for within a long time, and this trust could be built like really quick. So in Kota Kita we have this initiative of, we try to bridge between the youth, especially youth communities, and also local government by, like delivering what youth thoughts, or their opinions, or their proposals regarding the improvement of the city by kind of a digital platform that will be connected to the government, so that their ideas could be delivered quicker compared to like the traditional way of, like conducting hearings or etc. Because also this is also because of our findings that um, the provided spaces from the government is very limited, and regarding the youth specifically, they have this kind of participatory space, but it's very limited. They only invite very few of young people, and it's not representative, we can say. So we conducted a very long process, data collection, research, and interviews and stuffs, and then at the end we conducted a co-production process of the digital platform. So we put together both government and also the young people itself. And throughout the process, we see the tribes of young people in this initiative, that they are happy to participate, they happy to meet with each other, and even during the process, they kind of build I'll say like alliance where they collaborate with other youth communities and create some initiatives in the city. So I can say that young people are really eager to participate, and at some point the government also really excited with this initiative. But on the other hand, it's really challenging to kind of get the commitment from the government whether they will be really um, kind of committed throughout the platform, although they are happy with the idea, but to get the formal commitment is very challenging, and we kind of found that we have to do this because like I'm sorry if I'm kind of a bit unclear, but uh, young people is really willing to participate, but they really need this objective of how government could really hear them and like probably adopt their opinions, adopt their ideas, proposals to something to a formal in a formal process or to something that really that really kind of big or applicable in the city, and that's those kind of things couldn't be probably really executed by young people itself. They really need a hand from the government. So young people trust their own self. They trust us as a local NGO, but they don't trust the government. So my question is that um, how to ensure that uh, these young people, are still willing to kind of do the initiative, uh, like between them to do, like any probably informal participation and also keep their spirit in the city, meet the others in the group, etc. If, probably if we can say that when our program is over, when we don't have any more resources to give, when we don't have any more incentive to provide, we don't have any more training to give to them, like how they could sustain their own initiative, how they can keep the spirit, and when the situation is the government really cannot give their commitment to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Alma. Um, I I think of some ideas. We work a lot with kind of activists inside the local government. We have managed to identify those young people who are also in the government, or a woman who has a strongly connection with some topics, and we work with them as an additional bridges between the civil society and the institution. They are already inside the institutions, but we sees them as a more approachable actor inside the public institution. That's one of the reflections I come across. Also, can be important to connect with other stakeholders or institutions. Um, I think you talk about how youngs connected with other, but it also can be important to reach out another NGOs or other outside the country, other international stakeholders that can also do um, incentives. That's something I think it could be a concern. If the government isn't as compromised as we need to they to be, we need to manage how we maintain the young people involved. So if we wait to the government, they might be get inactive. So we have to manage how do we um, get to people receive this incentive, this value of some form. So that's where I think about another organizations and another stakeholders that might help us in that way. And finally, it might be important to get into the process a bit of uh, formation or pedagogical alignment, so young people can really understood how their ideas and uh, reflections can be really be integrated by the local government or the government itself. There are maybe it's important to have this moment of grounding the expectations, because young people get super excited really quick, but also get super dismotivated really quick. So I think that's are the three points occurs to me to say to you that might help you to maintain the initiative while the government isn't as commitment as we need to be. I don't know if maybe Sylvie, Meli, Andrea wants to share something, because they also have a lot of experience of this matter.
I think it will be very insightful if we can hear another kind of perspectives in this case, because you hear us a lot, and it's necessary also to hear you. Uh, if anyone else want to share some thought or takeaway from the session, we can leave a few minutes more for this last conversation. Maybe I don't know if Antares over there or one of the mentors also, if want to share something.
Uh, Probably just a little more for me. So I like to. It's kind of it's not a confirm, but I'm thinking out loud. So, for example, if our kind of original objective is to bridge this participation between young people and government, but on the other hand, we also already thought about what Vanessa already advised to seek for other, for example, organizations, NGOs, and we also create this safe space for young people itself to meet each other, to collaborate, and to organize things within their own communities. Uh, when we cover all of these things, but we couldn't reach that big objective of getting government to agree what we are doing. That could be fine in this case.
I think that getting the government to commit with this kind of process is one of the biggest challenge we had when we have every day in the deliberative agenda. But what I've learned about methodologies of conflict resolution is that for we conceived an idea of a collaborative perspective, we need to both sides understood or understand why it's important to collaborate. So is it difficult? We need to do all we can or take all the meetings we can to the government to really hear why this is important. And if we try to reach person by person, so we can get in the public institutions so they can really see why is this valuable, and try different formats. Um, but yeah, it's an objective that it 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 goes ups up and down. So I hope you don't get dismotivated, unmotivated. I don't know how, because it is the most, I think, one of the most complex challenge we had, and get that commitment to stay in the time. So
Great, thank you so much. If there is any comment, I think we can close for today's session. Thank you again all for joining us. Thank you for all your comments. Icha in the chat, it's also saying a comment regarding it was a beautiful presentation and very useful. Um, we invite you to join us again for the next session that will be in May 5. So set your agendas. The idea is that in this session, we will talk about advocacy. That is something that, of course, is very related with this topic as well. But in that case, we will focus on how create roots of advocacy from our deliberative models that allow us to make real changes. This is, of course, a very important topic too. So very welcome for that session. Thank you so much again, all for joining us. And remember also like to make the short survey. I will put it again to see your comments and evaluation of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you very much.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.